Hello, my name is Laura, and this is my husband Thane, and today we're going to see if Thane can pass the hEDS Diagnostic criteria. Now, I have already been officially diagnosed with hEDS, so I know I pass, but we're going to see how Thane and I compare to each other. So first is the Criterion 1, and it tests for generalized joint hypermobility. So this is the Beighton score. And so first up, Thane, is our pinkies. Can your pinky bend 90 degrees or greater? Can you bend it back? I'd say yes on that one. Go ahead and do the other one. Oh, you got an injured pinky. Do you know if it can or can't?
It shouldn't be any less flexible than this.
That one's not quite greater than 90. It's real close to 90, but I'd say it's a little bit less. So we're going to give Thane 1 point there for one of the fingers. And then I know both of mine do, so back and back. So I get 2 there. And then next is our thumbs. Can your thumb bend and touch your wrist? And it could just be the tip. It doesn't have to be flat like mine does. Ooh, really close. Okay, what about the other one? I think Thane's pretty flexible for a guy, especially a guy who doesn't stretch every day. Not quite, but close. But yes, and mine both touch my wrist. That one, just the tip touches, and then this one, it goes completely flat against it. So Thane won't get any there, but I get 2. Okay, next is elbows. So your elbows hyperextending 10 degrees or greater. So your elbows should be perfectly straight, and if they hyperextend, they bend backwards a little bit. So it's kind of hard to see on camera. Mine do, both of them. And I don't remember if yours do or not. Let's see. I think it hyperextends. I'd say, I don't know if it's exactly 10. It's hard to say without one of those devices. That one I don't think so at all. Maybe the other one. We'll give you 1 point for one of your elbows. And both of mine do. Next is knees. Do your knees hyperextend all the way backwards, greater than 10 degrees? Okay, let's look at Thane's knees. So are they bent back all the way?
As far back as I can go.
Okay, I'd say your left leg is for sure a no. Go ahead and move your left leg out of the way, or yeah, turn the other way. I think that's a no as well. They look pretty, I think they look pretty straight. And there's our dog, Ina. Hi, Ina. And that's my left leg. And I know mine hyperextends more than 10 degrees. I forget what it is. I think she said 15 or something on my left. And my right's actually pretty close to 10. It's not as much as the left, but I know it does hyperextend a little bit there. So this is what normal legs should look like, and then mine go back a little bit. And next up is whether or not Thane can bend down without bending his knees and touch his palms flat on the floor. So go ahead and try, Thane. Really close. Oh, he almost had it. Like, I think maybe if you stretched your hamstrings first, I think you could get it. Maybe. I mean, that's
so close.
So close. Okay, and then, so we just finished Thane's knees. This makes me really dizzy when I stand up and bend over and then stand up again. So I'll just post a picture of me doing it, but I can do it easily. So I have 9 out of 9 points on the Beighton score. And Thane, I feel like if you stretched, you could get the hands flat on the ground. But for now, we'll call that 0. So Thane gets 2 out of 9 on the Beighton score. Maybe possibly a 3 if he stretched first. And so there is a little bit of a caveat on this Beighton score in here, and it says, so if you are 1 point too short, so say Thane was 4 out of 9 instead of 3 out of 9, if he could answer yes to 2 of these next 5 questions, he could then get bumped up 1 point and pass the criteria. So extra part says, can you now or could you ever place your hands flat on the floor without bending your knees? That's a yes, correct?
Yes,
for you, you could at some point. Okay, and then can you now or could you ever bend your thumb to touch your forearm?
I've never tried before now.
Okay, so we'll just say no. As a child, did you amuse your friends by contorting your body into strange shapes, or could you do the splits?
I could not do the splits, but I did. I have brought my knees up onto the desk in front of me and done stuff like that to where I was flexible in the hips.
Yes. Okay, so Thane would get a yes for that. So already he would get 1 extra point. And then as a child or teenager, did your shoulder or kneecap dislocate on 1 or more occasion?
I did have I guess not kneecap, but I have hyperextended my knees.
Okay.
When I was younger.
Okay.
Where it was actually taken to the hospital for it. So.
Okay. And then, do you consider yourself double jointed? I'd say your hips are, but maybe not your whole body. Okay. But right now, he's scoring 2 out of 9. Okay, so next up is Criterion 2. This is the area where it kind of goes over features of connective tissue fragility. And so in Criterion 2, there are 3 separate sections, feature A, feature B, and feature C, and you have to have 2 or more of those features met. So 2 out of the 3 you have to meet. So feature A is a long one. It has 12 sections. So first one is unusually soft or velvety skin. So this one's a bit subjective, but you know, you could feel your friend's skin. So I'm feeling Thane's. What do you think, Thane?
I mean, I've always thought you had very soft skin.
So I'll probably say, and I know my geneticist said that I do meet the criteria for unusually soft or velvety skin. So I'll put a check mark on here for mine, and we'll just say no for Thane's. Next is mild skin hyperextensibility. So you can pull on different areas of your body, but I know my geneticist kind of pulled in the middle of my forearm here. So it kind of pulls up a little bit. And then I know on my neck stretches out a bit. So Thane's, I definitely say Thane has mild hyperextensibility because it's the same, if not even maybe a little bit stretchier than mine. Yeah, like I'd say for sure Thane meets that one. So we're gonna both get a mark for that. Okay, next is unexplained striae distensae or rubae on the back, groin, thighs, breasts, and or abdomen in adolescents, men or pre-pubertal, women without a history of significant gain or loss of body fat or weight. So that's a long string of words that basically just means stretch marks that aren't there for a specific reason. So if you've given birth to children, the stretch marks on your abdomen don't count. If you've had major weight gain or loss, those don't count. Yeah, but Thane actually has a ton of stretch marks all over his body. So he can maybe show some on camera on his arms. I don't know if the camera's gonna pick this up very well. I don't know. It's hard for the camera to pick it up, but that's okay. But he for sure has stretch marks on his arms. He has some on his chest. And yeah, and I have stretch marks myself, but they're the normal ones. So I have some on like my thighs and buttocks from puberty, but that's very normal. So I do not get a point there, but Thane does. So we're gonna put a mark for Thane. Okay, next up is bilateral pyogenic papules of the heel. So that is another fancy word for basically these little like bubbles of fat that poke through the skin on your heel, and you usually can't see them unless you are standing up. So you kind of need a friend to do this with you. Although if you are alone, you can take your foot and just press really hard and maybe get them to show up, but it's kind of hard. So I'm going to take the camera and we're going to see if Thane has these bilateral pyogenic papules. And bilateral means both feet, so you need to have them on both feet. Okay, here's Thane's right foot without any weight on it. Go ahead and press your weight down now, Thane. And if I get really close, you can actually see several on his heel there. So go ahead and take your weight off. And then let's see the other foot. Okay, and here's Thane's left foot with no weight. Go ahead and put weight down on your foot. And you can see a couple on the outside of his heel. Go ahead and turn your foot around. Let's see if the inside's a little better. Okay, and weight down. Yeah, yep, there's a few popping out, definitely. Here's my foot without any weight on it. And here's weight on my foot. Are they popping out? Mm-hmm. Perfect. And then here's my left foot, no weight. And then here's me putting weight on my left foot. Are they popping out?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. Okay, so I'm giving both of us points for bilateral pyogenic papules of the heel. So next is recurrent or multiple abdominal hernias. No, and I haven't had those either, so neither of us get points for that. Next is atrophic scarring involving at least 2 sites and without the formation of truly papyraceous and or hemosideриc scars as seen in classical EDS. Atrophic scarring is scars that kind of dent into the skin, and when they're talking about truly papyraceous and hemosideриc scars, they're talking about what's called cigarette paper scars. So it's those like really thin and wrinkly scars that's typically seen in classical EDS, so a whole different subtype. So Thane actually for sure has some atrophic scarring, at least one big one and maybe some little ones, yes. And then I do as well. I have a few, but they're very small and they're hard to see on camera. So I'll just post a picture of Thane's most prominent atrophic scar so you guys can see what that looks like. But we are both going to get points for this, atrophic scarring. Next is pelvic floor, rectal, and or uterine prolapse in children, men or nulliparous women without a history of morbid obesity or other known predisposing medical conditions. So this means pelvic floor prolapse if you are a child, a man, or a woman who has not given birth, because giving birth predisposes you for getting prolapses, as well as being morbidly obese also predisposes you for getting that because of the amount of weight pressing down on your pelvic floor. So I have not ever given birth. Thane is a man. Have you ever had a pelvic floor prolapse?
Not that I know of.
Okay, and then I have not been officially diagnosed, but I do have symptoms of a very specific type of prolapse. So mine's going to be a maybe, and Thane is going to be a no. So we'll put a question mark on mine. Okay, next is dental crowding and high or narrow palate. So Thane, would you smile for the camera? He has very straight teeth, nothing crooked at all. He's never had braces, so definitely no dental crowding. The high or narrow palate, I don't really know how to tell. So I'm not a dentist or a medical professional that would know what that looks like. So I'm gonna guess no for Thane, but I don't really know. You've never had a dentist tell you anything weird about your palate. And then I for sure have dental crowding. My teeth are very straight now, but that's because I've had 2 separate sets of braces, and I have had 8 total teeth pulled because there isn't enough room in my mouth for all of my teeth. And then my dentist, or not my dentist, my geneticist has told me that my palate is high and narrow. So I don't know if you can see that on camera, but apparently I have that. So I'm going to give myself a point there, and then none for Thane there. Next is called arachnodactyly, and that is defined as having one or more of the following. And so you either have to have a positive wrist sign or a Walker sign on both wrists, or a positive thumb sign or the Steinberg sign on both sides. So we'll do the wrist one first, the Walker sign, and that is if you take your thumb and your pinky, you wrap it around your wrist, and if your thumb can completely cover like your pinky nail there, you get a positive 1 there. So go ahead and try Thane.
Nope.
So it doesn't even touch on Thane. And yep, on both sides. And on one of my sides, I don't feel like my thumb can completely cover my fingernail, but it's really close. I know my geneticist gave me full points there, but I don't know that I necessarily do on this side. And then, so next is the Steinberg sign, or the hand sign, and that's when you take your thumbs, you kind of fold them over and then fold your fingers over, and if you turn them around, do your thumbs stick out the other side? And so both of mine do, so I get full points there. And Thane's do not. So you just have to have one or the other, and I for sure have at least one, but I know my geneticist said I had both, so I get a point there. Thane doesn't get any there. Okay, next is arm span to height ratio. It needs to be greater than or equal to 1.05. So basically we're going to measure each other's height and then our arm span and see if that height versus arm span is greater than or equal to 1.05. So we have our measuring tape here. So I'll just do Thane. I already know that I actually don't pass. I think mine was 1.03. So we'll skip me and we'll just measure Thane. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and measure Thane. He is a lot taller than me, so this is kind of difficult. All right, I'm going to step on the tape measure. Let me put this behind me, Thane. Oh my gosh, this is really hard. Okay, you are right at about 6'1". And then, okay, go ahead and stick your arms way out. Got that side. And I'd say, so 74.5 inches. And that's, so 73 for height, 74.5 inches. Let's go ahead and do that calculation. 74.5 divided by 73, 1.02. So Thane's was 1.02. I believe mine was 1.03 when I was tested at the geneticist, so neither of us get points for that one. Next up is mitral valve prolapse, also called MVP, mild or greater based on strict echocardiographic criteria. So you can only know if you have this if you have a echocardiogram, which is also a heart ultrasound. So I have had one, and I know I do not have a mitral valve prolapse. Do you know if you have one?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so neither of us will get points there. Next is aortic root dilation with Z-score greater than +2. And I know I don't have that. And I don't believe you do either, correct? Haven't ever been tested. So neither of us gets points there. So overall, under feature A, I get 6, but maybe 7. Thane gets for sure 4. So Thane gets 4 out of 12. I get 6, maybe 7, and you need 5 out of those 12 to pass. So I pass. Thane doesn't in feature A, but he can still pass all of Criterion 2 if he meets the next 2 features. So feature B is positive family history one or more first-degree relatives independently meeting the current criteria for hEDS. So this is going to be a first-degree relative is a parent, a child, or a sibling. So that's first degree. And my mother has been officially diagnosed, so I get a point there. Do you have any first-degree relatives diagnosed?
Nope.
Nope. So Thane doesn't get any there. And I'll mark down that I get a point. Okay, so feature C, the last one under Criterion 2. And you must have at least one of these 3 points. So first one, musculoskeletal pain in 2 or more limbs, reoccurring daily for at least 3 months. It's kind of a hard one.
Hard to say. I have a random chronic pain.
Yeah, we're kind of old. Thane's 33, I'm 32. We kind of just have some chronic pain. But let's give you a point there. I don't know. Thane's an old man. He's got a lot of old man pain, so we're both going to get points there for sure. All right, next is chronic widespread pain for greater than or equal to 3 months.
I would not say so.
Okay, and I for sure get that. My pain is definitely chronic and widespread, but it's very mild, so even though I have pain every day, it's nothing to write home about. I can kind of ignore it most of the time. Okay, last is recurrent joint dislocations or frank joint instability in the absence of trauma. So Thane's ankles used to roll all the time. He's twisted and rolled his ankles like all the time growing up. So I'd say he probably has frank joint instability specifically in his ankles, but not really so much anywhere else. But have you ever had a joint dislocate more than once?
No, not that I remember.
Okay, so probably, I'm not sure if that counts for frank joint instability for Thane, but let's put a maybe there for him. So we're gonna get a question mark, and then I get that for sure. Well, I haven't had recurrent dislocations. I have a joint that kind of goes in and out a little bit, but not like completely dislocates. But the frank joint instability for sure I do have kind of all over. Criterion 3, this is the very last one. So Criterion 3 is mostly ruling out other connective tissue disorders, other types of EDS, that sort of thing. So there are 3 parts to it. Part 1 is absence of unusual skin fragility, which should prompt consideration for other types of EDS. So if your skin, say, tears super easily, like you take a Band-Aid off and it just like rips off skin and you bleed, you might want to consider something like classical EDS or dermatosparaxis EDS or something. So if you have unusual skin...
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. And neither do I. No, my skin's pretty normal as far as fragility. So both of us have absence of that, so that's good. Okay, so number 2 says exclusion of other heritable and acquired connective tissue disorders, including autoimmune rheumatologic conditions in patients with an acquired connective tissue disorder such as lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, etc. Additional diagnosis of hEDS requires meeting both features A and B of Criterion 2 and feature C of Criterion 2, which is the one that counts for chronic pain and or instability, cannot be counted towards a diagnosis of HES in this situation. So this means if you have something like lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, then you have to meet features A and B. Feature C doesn't count. So because lupus or something like rheumatoid arthritis might give you chronic pain and that sort of thing, that one doesn't count. So you have to meet the other one. So it's a little stricter if you have another rheumatologic condition or something else that could affect you. And last but not least, it says exclusion of alternative diagnoses that may also include joint hypermobility by means of hypotonia and or connective tissue laxity. Alternative diagnoses and diagnostic categories include, but are not limited to, neuromuscular disorders such as Bethlem myopathy, other hereditary disorders of the connective tissue such as other types of EDS, Loyd-Steet syndrome, Marfan syndrome, skeletal dysplasias, such as osteogenesis imperfecta. Exclusion of these considerations may be based upon history, physical examination, and or molecular genetic testing as indicated. So that's a lot of words that just means, have you been diagnosed with any other condition that could make you pass all of this criteria? So that means other types of EDS. You cannot have hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome if you have another type of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And then you also can't have Loyd-Steet syndrome or Marfan syndrome, because if you pass the criteria for HEDS and you've been diagnosed with one of these other conditions, that's because you have features of another connective tissue disorder that make you pass the criteria. So you won't be diagnosed with more than one. So we have not been diagnosed with any of those things. I actually got genetic testing and it was all negative for the other connective tissue disorders as well as the other types of EDS. So that's basically everything. Let's look at our points. So Thane gets a 2 out of 9 on the Beighton score, and he got 4 out of 12 on feature A, and you need 5 to pass. So basically, Thane does not meet the criteria for hEDS, and we didn't think he would because he doesn't have it. But he got a lot more points than I thought he would. So that just goes to show that a person without hEDS could get quite a few points on this criteria. And then on mine, I get a 9 out of 9 on the Beighton score, and then 6, maybe 7 in feature A, and then I also meet both feature B and feature C. And then of course Criterion 3, ruling out all of the other types I meet as well. So there you have it. So Thane does not pass the criteria, but I love him anyway. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.